Okay, welcome back to Elevated Duty Podcast. This is another week of, Elevated Duty Podcast.
Yes, exciting.
So this week we have someone that I was telling her before. She first thing I asked her is like, what you haven't done in the Guard. Welcome to the podcast, Sergeant. Well. Yeah, you used to be Staff Sergeant Lindsey Lopez, but now is candidate.
Now Officer Candidate.
Yeah,
Yes.
Officer Candidate Lindsey
Welcome.
Lopez. How are you
That's
doing?
me. Good. I'm doing really good. Yeah, excited to be here.
Good.
So, I started the podcast saying that like you've done crazy stuff is because you are part of everything almost. Like
I try. I really do.
So and funny thing is, Sergeant Norcross asked me, "Where are the questions?" I'm like, "There's no questions." And then you walk into the door, and I'm like, "I see the OCS on your chest," and I'm like, "Another thing."
Yeah.
It's like,
Mhm.
so you are. So for those that don't know or don't follow our page, because recently we've been spotlighting you and the teams you're part of. So you're part of the biathlon team.
hmm
You're part of the marathon team,
The marathon team. Yes.
the endurance team.
hmm
You are the incentives NCOIC,
I am the education incentives on COIC.
and now candidate for OCS.
Yeah.
Something else I'm missing?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No. That's it.
So it's crazy, Sergeant Norcross. If you think you do stuff, Sergeant Lopez probably will beat that.
You and I talked about it. I'd mentioned it with Officer Candidate Lopez as well. And I've heard your name a lot throughout the Colorado National Guard in a good way. The Guard is so small, and
Mhm.
you start, even if you have not met a soldier, officially and spent a lot of time in training, you start to pick up names. And we were talking a little bit about that. And so it's so nice to have you here and hear your story. Do you want to tell us about from the beginning?
Yeah.
Wherever you want to start with your story.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started in the Minnesota Army National Guard back in 2014. I was a junior when I enlisted. So I was a split ops. So then I went to basic training between my junior and senior year. So I really do appreciate that aspect because it was able to break up basic and AIT, but still be in the military, however, pursuing my education.
Mm-hmm.
So once I graduated from high school, I went straight into AIT, and that was grand. So afterwards, after graduating from AIT, I actually did graduate and become DMOSQ as a cook, as a 92 Gulf.
Really?
Yes. So that's where my journey did start. And it built resiliency more than anything,
Sure.
because that is a thankless job. But me personally, I knew that wasn't the course for me.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went ahead and started getting the feelers out to be able to reclass to a 42 Alpha.
Okay.
And so I did that. And ever since then, I've been a 42 Alpha, and I am actually a military technician. So I'm a permanent tech at the G1 currently. But I started that journey in 2018 and just really took advantage of everything that the military had to offer. And that includes all these extracurricular activities.
Yeah, and we're going to get into those. Sergeant Rivera briefly pushed over them and yourself, and I want to dive into each specific one and how you got into that program and what led you down that path.
Mm-hmm.
But going back into high school, you said from Minnesota,
Mhm.
and you were a split train option. Can you tell the viewers and the current soldiers that may have experienced that same thing, what was your journey like finding a recruiter in Minnesota and finding out about the National Guard and then applying for that split train option?
Yeah. So for me, I'm a first generation. So my parents are immigrants from Mexico. And my journey started with not having any funds available for myself in college. So then I started kind of gathering information, seeing what was out there. And so it just happened that a recruiter was at a luncheon. So they had their table set up, and I walked up to them and I was like, free college, huh? Like, yep. It gave me all the details, and Then I turned 17 that following week, and then 2 weeks later, swore in, and that was as easy as that.
Now, when you were talking with the recruiter, I know you said you first enlisted as a cook,
Mm-hmm.
the MOS for a cook. Did you pick that with your recruiter? Was that one of the paths that was available for the split train option? Did you want to be that MOS joining the National Guard? I know you said you eventually switched over. What made you decide that MOS at 17?
At 17, well, I previously not even dove into the military whatsoever. So everything was super foreign to me, and my parents had to sign the consent form because I was 17 when joining.
Yes.
And my recruiter was like, oh, at 17, a 92 Golf does not see combat. She's going to be safe. So it was more or less a safety net for my mom and my dad. That comfort of knowing that their child is going to be okay. So that's what was a deciding factor for me and for my parents to say yes.
Okay.
So, funny thing is that recently, like previous podcast, that we had the General Rogers,
Mm-hmm.
and the main thing she mentions is like she was going to junior Eastern College.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to do a bachelor's degree. Now I don't have the means to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Captain Allen mentioned the same thing. He's like, I needed money to go to college.
Yes.
So it's funny that that's the main thing. Like, I'm not a recruiter, but I work with recruiting. So we do a lot of events with recruiting, and I stand on tables and booths with recruiting, with recruiters. And that's the main thing I mentioned to the kids. And then these guys in people in high school, colleges and stuff is like, are you paying for college? Are you willing to, or like, do you want to pay for college? Yeah, I'm like, no. Like,
the answer should always be no.
Yeah, don't do that. Let us pay for college. Doesn't matter what you do. Let us pay for college. We will pay for college, and then like at least a bachelor's degree. Even though majority of people will, if you strive for more, will pay for more.
Oh, sure.
But it's I know people that they only have a bachelor's degree and they have $200,000 in
Mm-hmm.
debt. I'm like, don't do that. Like, let us pay for college. As long as it's like we'll pay the GI Bill and stuff. But then if you do any of our state colleges, we'll pay in-state tuition. So I'm like, don't pay for college. Like every time. I recently was with Sergeant Leo and the band.
Yeah.
And like we spoke with dozens of kids, and I'm like, don't pay for college.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pay for college. Don't make your parents, like some parents will be like, I'll pay for my kids. Like don't make your parents pay
Right.
for school.
Save the money.
Save the money.
Yes.
Let us pay for college.
Go ahead.
The biggest thing for me that brings fulfillment in my full-time job as the Education Incentives NCOIC is being able to promote all the education benefits. Like, it's true. You do not have to pay a cent towards your tuition. So like you said, the state tuition assistance, it pays up through a doctorate's degree,
Mhm.
if that's what soldiers
Yeah.
choose.
So that's what I say. Like probably not all of them will go to masters and doctors, but they just go to bachelors and they get them these massive debt. And I'm like,
Right.
what are you doing?
And so what can you tell us your story after the split train? So in between your junior and senior year, after you met with your recruiter and, calm down mom and dad, and you went to training and then coming back, finishing senior year, how was that through the senior year process? For those that have heard about this,
Yeah.
or they're maybe interested.
As a senior coming back from basic training, it was strange to say the least, and in the best way.
Okay.
Because I walked through the halls and everyone was like, wow, like you're in the military, you're in the Army National Guard. Like that is really cool. And there was only a few of us that went through high school went through senior year already having graduated from basic. And it was this respect that was given and earned because
Absolutely.
everyone else was just going through their senior year, having spent their their summer at the lake, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
Sure.
it was how I chose to spend mine, and I was grateful for that option.
You got a head start on your career.
Exactly.
And it was not just summer fun and worrying about high school. You had other things you need to worry about, and obligations and responsibilities now. And so you said that was pretty, differential for the other students to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I felt like it really set me up into adulthood really well. I moved out at 18 years old and hadn't been back since. And I was able to establish myself professionally, academically, all because of being able to enlist at 17 and be able to experience all of what I did.
That's amazing. And so after graduation of high school, what was the next steps?
So naturally, it was college. So I did a semester at the University of Minnesota Duluth.
Mm-hmm.
And how we spoke about the education benefits before, it is very, very critical to follow the timelines, the application periods. So being 18 in Minnesota, 2 hours away from home, I did not follow the timeline of requesting state TA appropriately. So now, looking forward to where I am now, it's really hard for me to say to soldiers, like, unfortunately, you're not eligible for state TA because you didn't meet the window. Because that was me. That was me back when I was 18. So that's what forced me to stop pursuing my academic career and made me look at the military for full-time employment.
Sure.
And that's when I started my career, my full-time career being in the military.
We've heard that on the recruiting side and even throughout the state, National Guard side of soldiers that are currently using the tuition assistance benefits and the state TA and the federal tuition assistance. You said that you didn't kind of follow the timeline and guidelines. What advice would you give soldiers and those that are going through the process or talking with a recruiter and they're learning about these benefits now? What can set them up for success to ensure that the benefits that are being given are used correctly? How would that look for a soldier or somebody joining the National Guard?
Yeah, I strongly recommend that you ask questions. Ask questions to your leadership, to your E5, E6, E7, First Sergeant. Someone is bound to know someone or somewhere to get that information. And nothing is done for you. You have to make sure to be proactive and look at the timelines, look at the application periods, ask those appropriate questions to be able to get the answers. And it ultimately does fall on you to look out for yourself. And we're more than willing to give those benefits, but we don't know that you're requesting them unless you ask or do so appropriately.
I think you would agree that that's a lot of programs. That's a lot of benefits and incentives throughout the Guard in general. You have to speak up, like you said, and ask for help.
Yeah, we do have a lot of stuff, and we did some videos in the past with Sergeant Lopez, and when she was going over them, I'm like, how many do we have? Because we have federal tuition assistance, state tuition assistance, but then we have GI Bill, but there's different chapters. Can you give us a brief, like, if you want me to pop up any website or whatever,
sure.
we can go with. Because I know when I was you were explaining them, I was like, how many of these do we have? So can you tell them the website?
Absolutely. So all GI Bill applications are going to go through va.gov. And so that's how soldiers request to use their GI Bill. For state tuition assistance, it's going to be through the DMVA website. And to request for federal tuition assistance, it's going to be through Army Ignited. So
the MVA will be the MVA Colorado, right?
Correct.
Let me do something pretty fast here.
And the easiest way to get to all the education programs is by typing in Colorado Army National Guard Education Services, and just on any search engine, and then our public page should pop up where soldiers can select hyperlinks to be able to go to these websites.
Okay, so what was that one? That one you
Colorado Army National Guard Education Services.
And all of these sites, if a soldier is currently serving in the Colorado National Guard, Army, or Air, they can access and look up to see what they're eligible for?
Correct. So on this website that will pop up, there's a bunch of flyers that are going to be available, so soldiers or airmen can click through them and see what they're eligible for. And there's also points of contact for our office to be able to ask questions.
Awesome.
This one is not loading. Oh, there we go. So on here, so these are all the links, right?
Correct.
So if they need federal tuition assistance, they can go to this one. And then state is through the DMVA page, right?
Correct. So that one is if on the...
This one?
So not quite. So go back to that one tab. Scroll up. And the external links to education programs, you can click on state tuition assistance. And that is the exact page where soldiers and airmen can either reach out to their point of contacts or gather information for themselves. And this is exactly where they submit their application.
Perfect.
Awesome. And then here's the
eligibility requirements.
Yeah. That's great. And then right now we have soon we have I think every year we have soldiers deploying and going OT ADOS. So once you do a certain amount of time, you're eligible to post 9/11, right?
With very specific requirements. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because on the main education services page, if you scroll down and click the GI Bill drop down, post 9/11 GI Bill Chapter 33, what's going to pop up is a flyer. So in this flyer, you'll see, how do I qualify? So soldiers must serve at least 90 days in these periods of qualifying active duty service. So it's not just any ADOS order, and unfortunately IDTs, ATs don't qualify for
Schools,
the post 9/11 GI Bill.
etc.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think this is, we have soldiers soon deploying. So, once they get back, they, depending on how much time they serve, they can get the benefits. So again, don't pay for college.
Exactly.
You're getting that benefit once you go on mobilization. So, use that. And then on top of that, one thing some people don't know, and recently I was talking with this NCO from my unit, and I was like, post 9/11 gives you BAH, and he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, post 9/11 gives you BAH. So can you go a little bit more into that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be glad to if you can scroll down a little bit. So there are 3 things that the post 9/11 GI Bill pays for. One is tuition, up to 100%. The second is the book and supply stipend, up to $1,000 per academic year. And the third is the monthly housing allowance at the rate of BAH of E5 with dependents, regardless of what rank you are or ever will be.
Okay.
Even after separating from the service. So I kept saying up to is because the payments are prorated based on the qualifying service. So the minimum 90 days of being in that qualifying period of active duty service is 50%, and 36 months is at 100% or 3 years. So that's how that accrues. And the post 9/11 GI Bill is available for 36 months, and being on more periods of qualifying active duty service only increase your percentage tier. It does not increase the amount of months you have. That's a common misconception.
So one thing I learned before I transferred from the reserve into the guard, so I went to my education center. I'm like, I want to make sure I do this right. And then they highly recommended me to transfer my regular Montgomery GI Bill into post 9/11.
Yes.
Why?
Why is because ultimately Chapter 33 post 9/11 GI Bill is the one that pays out the most. Chapter 30 Montgomery GI Bill active duty is sunsetting in 2030. So HQDA, everyone knows, the VA knows that this is going to be the better payout for soldiers in general. There's very, very few circumstances where Chapter 30 is the better GI Bill, but that's circumstance based. So I try to be very approachable, and whenever soldiers from whatever rank it may be, I give them all the information they ask to make these educated, not guesses, to make
the choice.
Yeah.
The
give
best
them the
option.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then that way they can either pay nothing or even make a little bit of money by going to school.
Yeah.
That's great. And I love how knowledgeable you are. Obviously, you do this on the full-time side. And going back to, you said after the Minnesota you were looking, and did that get you here into the Colorado National Guard on the full-time side on the technician?
So it was actually
Program?
after a deployment that I did in Djibouti, Africa.
Okay.
I just wanted to spin things up. I just wanted to do more, get more from life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what initiated my interstate transfer to Colorado, because it was the mountains. You get to do a little bit of everything. And it just wound up that, yes, the education and incentives position opened up, and I feel like it was full circle for me.
So, okay, let me make sure I'm getting this right. So you were in Minnesota, deployed with the Minnesota National Guard,
Yes.
and then came back from deployment, put in an IST or an interstate transfer. What about Colorado? Did you know anyone in Colorado? What was the reason for Colorado?
No, I did not know a soul here. I didn't have any family, no friends here. My significant other and I, we moved here together.
Okay.
And took on the world by ourselves here.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
yeah.
And so after the IST was initiated and moved to Colorado, applying for the technician simultaneously at the same time?
So we actually moved out here while I was still in my like USERRA leave is what we call it. So I was still technically unemployed, but my technician position was still held for me in Minnesota.
Okay,
so
good.
I knew I wanted to still be a military technician.
Okay.
So that's when I started vigorously applying. And so that's when I landed the position after I've been here for 2 months. And then I got the position at the
Okay.
G1, and I was like, okay, we're rock steady.
Good. I'm glad it worked out. That,
Thank you.
you know,
I
as chaotic and hectic as it is, it seemed pretty smooth
Yes,
overall, which
it
is good.
was.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You know, all the for some reason all the stories keep like aligning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Parisi.
Yep.
He came from California. Same
Mhm.
thing. Is like first thing I did is join the guard. Same thing. I'm like, I'm gonna submit an IST transfer.
Right.
See you. I'm going to Colorado.
Yeah.
Same thing with me. And I, I came here as a temp tech,
Mm-hmm.
and with recruiting, and same thing is like I submitted, like my wife got PCS here.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm unemployed. I need to start submitting, like, and then I'm like, I'm gonna use my qualifications as a public affairs, and try to
Mhm.
get a job on what I
Mhm.
like and what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the National Guard called me, and
Yeah.
and I mentioned that before on several podcasts. It's like I was going to reserve,
Mhm.
but then the National Guard offered me more. It's like, hey, you can do this full time. So you want a full time job? I'm like, yeah. I told the reserve, can you give me that? And they're like, no, we're not offering full time right now. I'm like, okay, bye.
Right.
So like stories keep aligning.
Yes.
Like we come here, and even though we have a lot of soldiers that are there, and they're like on a drilling status, we have
Mhm.
people that come here looking for opportunities and
Mhm.
land on a full-time status.
I think
so it's great.
I think the biggest thing that maybe not many soldiers realize is you have the ability to choose your career. You have
Mhm.
the ability to move around, to move states, to move
Mhm.
units, to change MOSs. Speaking as someone who's literally done all of that, that you have the choice, and you can choose to do what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled. You just have to ask.
So I think Sergeant Norcross in the past mentioned that it's like, hey, if you're not sure what you're doing, and you want like a stepping stone, join the guard. It's like, don't go active duty because you might not like the military or you might not like your job, and it's gonna be harder to change. And like I think in the guard, that's something you have. It's like you can like you can guide your career, as you mentioned. Like you can do more stuff, and you have more control over your career compared with active duty, where it's like you're active duty, you're gone. It's like,
Right.
where you going? We don't know where you're going.
You're stuck. Yeah.
You're going. We don't know where, but you're going.
Yeah. I find myself saying it a lot more in the National Guard. We don't care what you do. As long as you are pushing yourself and trying to be successful, whatever career path or adventure or journey that you are interested in or have questions about, we have programs for it. And reach out and ask. That's all it takes.
Yep.
Which leads us into after you got settled, what was the first kind of extracurricular opportunity that was presented to you by the National Guard that seemed interesting for you?
Absolutely. It was the biathlon team.
Okay.
So how I found out about it was actually in Minnesota. I have a close friend who kept urging me, hey, join the biathlon team for Minnesota. And I was like, I always came up with excuses, but come to Colorado and I see it on the monitors, the TV monitors that are scattered throughout the armories, saying biathlon call out, join the team. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
So fast forward 3 years later, I'm still doing it and I love the sport. Now I'm investing into equipment and time and practicing, and the camaraderie within the team is phenomenal.
Yeah. So tell me more about like the tryout process and how it looked joining the team. I know you said you saw it on, like the TVs that are scattered throughout the armories, and I've seen it as well. I have not come and talked to anybody in person on the biathlon team, but I see the accolades. I see the trainings. I see the photos from Sergeant Rivera. I see the publicity and the amazing work that you're doing. So when you said you called the number on the TV, and did you have a background in biathloning, skiing, shooting?
Yeah.
What was the process?
The thing that I wanted to do is get out there. I did not have any experience skiing, no downhill skiing, no cross country, nothing.
Wow.
And shooting, I mean, just marksmanship training, that was it. But it was the fact that I could put myself out of my comfort zone and be able to try out. So they held a snow camp in 2021. And that was my very first experience being on cross country skis. And it was terrifying. It was so scary. I can't tell you how many times I fell, how many times like I just,
it was
just
brand new.
So much snow in my face all the time. But our coach, Lieutenant Colonel Hahn, he was so encouraging, and all the other team members that were there, they were so encouraging. They were always saying, don't give up, like, we got this. And they would ski with me the 2 inches that I would go every minute.
Yeah.
But it was the encouragement and the support saying, don't give up. Like, it's okay. It'll click. And giving me the personal lessons that I stuck with the sport. And it turned out to be one of the best things that I've done in the military.
Are we pulling up?
Yes, I'm
the biathlon team.
Yeah, I'm pulling up some pictures that they sent me. This is on our Instagram page, CO National Guard. If you're not following us, please go there and follow us on CO National Guard Instagram and Facebook.
Now, for the biathlon team, you guys are on orders when you are practicing, when you are competing, when you're traveling.
This was on Utah, right? Recently.
Yes.
February.
Yeah, so we get to say that we're paid athletes.
Right. You absolutely are.
Yeah, so it was a really neat experience. So this is the CNGB championships. So there are states all across the the nation that come to compete. And so there are really strong competitors. Some of them are even Olympians that compete in the CNGB championships. And it's such a great experience because all the states come together. You know, you may not have a whole lot in common, but this sport is so encouraging. You'd be suffering down or up a hill, and there would be someone right next to you from Washington still like going, and it would just, you're suffering together, and that's fun. It turns out to be fun.
This is a video at the biathlon page, CO_national_guard_biathlon. I think Sergeant Phelps is the manager, right?
Yes.
For the page. So he sent us that video to collab. That's great.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's really fun that we get to do that. We get to come together as a team. And then shout out to Staff Sergeant Lisa Lefevre. She got on the All Guard team for the first time this year, and she is our co-captain,
amazing,
our co-coach for the team. So she did phenomenal.
That's great.
I love how you said it was so welcoming for you going into a new sport, and the team being so welcoming, the process to try out for the team, and here you are, you know, at Chief of the National Guard Bureau Championships representing the state of Colorado. For soldiers like yourself that are in the armories during drill weekends or annual training, and they see this on the TV and they hear other soldiers talking about it, would you recommend the same thing? Are you always looking for new talent on the team?
Oh, absolutely.
How does the tryout process work throughout the years, the timeline?
Yeah, so the timeline is we typically do a call out around November, December to gain whoever's interested, and we will take anybody. If they can take me, they can take anybody. I have no experience, and they shape me up to be somebody. So even if soldiers have no experience and just kind of want to like dabble into it or try out, like we said, they have the equipment, they have the rifles that they can issue. So it's not something that you have to be super dedicated and commit a whole lot of time if you just wanted to try out.
Or money for equipment and such.
Exactly, yeah. And if you learn to love the sport, you can invest however much money you want into the sport.
I'm sure the sky's the limit.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. But yeah, no, it's as easy as calling anybody on the team, whether it's through this page or reaching out to any team member, because we're more than happy to accept anybody and everybody.
I love to see it and I love to hear it. We meet individuals, applicants that are, you know, interested and wanting to know more about the National Guard. And one of the questions that always gets brought up is, you know, hey, do you guys have sports teams? Do you have clubs? Do you have, you know, they're looking for that connection. They're looking for that challenge, that environment they can surround themselves with, that team, right? And the Guard offers it through the biathlon team, through the different marksmanship programs, through the alpine, the running and hiking, the marathon team. Do you want to jump into the marathon team next? Was it similar? How did you were obviously started the biathlon team first?
No, so for me personally, I did biathlon 2021 to 22 season. And then the marathon was last year, so 2023. And how I came about that was the state coordinator, Specialist Bryce Peterson, asked me just flat out, hey, do you want to do a marathon? At first, I was really intimidated because I'd never
have not done a marathon.
No, I didn't before that. It's a lot. All these sports were really my first time doing the activity. And that is okay. As long as you put your best effort and a positive attitude, yes, they will take you. So this is the Lincoln Marathon that we did. And so there were 200 airmen and soldiers that were running this race. And it was great to see the support that was out there and to be able to connect with all the other states, the same as the biathlon team. So for the marathon team last year, it was just the two of us because there's not a whole lot of interest in running 26.2 miles.
Mhm.
However, it is very much available to anyone who is interested. And so what I try to do is broadcast it, promote it, market it, because it's an option to, again, be a paid athlete.
Yes. And so this was in Nebraska.
Mhm.
And again, right, you're put on orders. You are traveling TDY and competing and running a marathon on behalf of the Colorado National Guard.
Yes.
That's
So
amazing.
how many, like, I used to run and I've been thinking since I've been like helping you to market this. I've been thinking because I used to be runner.
Mhm.
I used to run like 800 and 1500 meters. For those who don't know, when I joined the military, I was 3 pounds over of being underweight. So I joined at 143 pounds at this height, 6'1". So and then the doctor at MEPS was like, stand there, and he's like, he checked the chart. He's like, oh, I think you're underweight, but you look at me and you're like, oh, you're underweight for sure. You're underweight.
Yeah.
So once he saw that scale, he's like, oh, you barely passed your height and weight by being underweight.
Mm.
It's like you're underweight, and you can tell. Like when I went to basic training and AIT, I gained, I think it was 30 pounds
Wow.
in like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
30 pounds. So I was underweight because I was running too much. Like
Yeah.
I was. It's LAI in Puerto Rico is almost like, it's not NCAA level.
Mm.
But it's
Mhm.
the NCAA in Puerto Rico. Basically, is that college competition. So that's what I
I
used to
better, I better see you at the next tryouts, San Rivera.
probably. Yeah. So going back to where I wanted to go, what competitions you usually do under the marathon team?
What competitions?
Mm-hmm.
The Lincoln Marathon.
What's the
So that's the main event.
That's the main event.
But let's say if you want to do, like, I know Army has the Army 10 miler, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yep.
So do we also get like paid travel for those or no?
So that I'm not too familiar with. I've yet to cross that off my checklist, but
Mhm.
I will soon.
okay?
But I imagine that it's the same thing, being put on orders to go and run. I believe it's at Arlington, Virginia, where they run the 10 miler. But it's a lot of personal training. It's however
Yeah.
much you put into
Yep.
it. And it's checking in with the teammates, with the coach, the
Mhm.
coordinator, that you're still doing it. But ultimately, if you're not putting in the hours, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So biathlon team first,
Mhm.
and then marathon team,
Mhm.
and we still have another team to bring up, the endurance team.
Yes.
Okay. And where does that fall in the timeline between these two?
So for me, we just competed for the endurance team time trials for NGB, or it was this month.
And
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. Yeah, break it
Was it
down.
like
Break it
2
down
weeks
for
ago?
me.
Mhm.
Break it down for me. The endurance team. What does that entail for a soldier that has not heard of the endurance team?
Absolutely. So it's the Spartan Deca Fit race. So what it entails is 10 zones. So each zone is different. It's weighted, whether it's box jumps, it's the farmer's carry. It all entails physical movement that's functional fitness, or that tests your functional fitness.
Okay.
And in between each zone, you run 500 meters. So ultimately, you end up doing a 5K. And for me, I finished it in 54 minutes, and I hardly stopped. I was constantly like going,
Yeah.
whether it was like the workouts, the zones itself, or a run. So it really was testing out your endurance, how fast you could do it, and if you could maintain that.
Wow.
And there was a cutoff. So if you were in the top 20 females or top 40 males, you got on the endurance all-guard team.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, none from Colorado did this year, but
That's okay.
2026 will come back.
Good.
Yeah.
And so the timeline I'm thinking in my head right now for like a regular calendar year, obviously the biathlon team, that's going to be like winter right?
Mhm.
When there's snow, and you can do the relay events and the shooting and skiing during the wintertime. Where does, during the calendar year, the endurance and the marathon team fall?
Absolutely. So yeah, the biathlon team is an annual event. So that is every year. However, the National Guard military competitions takes hold of the marathon and the endurance team.
Okay.
And what they do is flip-flop every year. So one year it's marathon, the next is endurance team.
Interesting.
The next
Okay.
is marathon, and so on and so forth. So the marathon was 2023, endurance is 2024. So then the marathon is back on in 2025 in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And so if you are trying out for the marathon team, you will essentially be trying out for also the endurance team if you want to the following year, or?
So they are separate.
Okay.
They are separate events under the same, essentially coordinators.
Sure.
So you would have to try out on two separate events.
Okay. And were the tryouts for the marathon and the endurance just as welcoming as the biathlon team was?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. We definitely try to get a lot more people in. There are a certain amount of slots that are available.
Okay.
So it goes to show that for the marathon team, we only had 2 available, but we could, I believe, bring on 4 or 5 people. So there was definitely room to bring people. And for the endurance team, it was a team of 4 and a coordinator, I believe. So it's just people, soldiers wanting to commit to be on the team and showing up.
Now, all 3 of these disciplines, I can only imagine, are very physically demanding.
Yes.
How would you say that has helped your, every year in the Army National Guard, we have to take the Army Combat Fitness Test, or our PT test. And obviously probably not a problem for anybody on the biathlon team and the endurance team and the marathon team.
I don't think they have any trouble.
Yeah. Have you seen an increase and for your promotion points that include your fitness test?
Yeah. So personally, what motivates me to work out, to be continuously pushing myself, is to set myself up for success by not only saying, oh, you're going to pass an CFT. No, you're going to excel at it. You're also going to do a marathon. So I'm setting myself up with milestones. So that's sporadic, or that's throughout the year. So it's not just once every year, oh, I have to start getting fit.
Right.
It makes me disciplined and look forward to something that's not just the ACFT, but other events. So that's what personally works for me. And it's been great so far. I'm still excelling at ACFTs, previously APFTs.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So, you've been part of all these teams. You've been you are the incentives coordinator is the NCYC. Biathlon, marathon team, endurance team. But then today, for me, it was a surprise. Like, I just got here, and then you open the door, and I see your OCS on your chest. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So OCS is the rank that we have to put on for us to go through the process of officer candidate school. So we're officer candidates through the 18-month state program that's held here in Colorado.
So you're doing the state one, right?
Correct.
Can you explain our viewers what it entails to be an officer candidate into a state program?
Yeah. So the application process was a paperboard, essentially. So I just had to submit all my documentation over to the correct point of contacts, and that's when I was considered. So then I got the approval saying that, yes, you are good to go to be an officer candidate. And formally, I was an E6. I'd been in 9 years. So I knew that it was going to be an adjustment, having to put back that mentality of like, of being told what to do, how to do it, when to eat, when to breathe. So that was a little bit of an adjustment, but it's the name of the game. I knew what I wanted, and it's an 18-month program, like I said. The in-processing started in February. So that's when all the officer candidates got to meet each other, and kind of it was that crawl walk phase.
Mm-hmm.
The crawl walk run phase was in like one day. So then come March, we were sprinting. We had our tack attack, which was an experience. It's just like basic training all over again. Staying up all hours of the night and doing all these physical activities. There's no walking anywhere. And we have our ACH, our flick, our assault pack on, and we're just these soldiers that are just like shuffling everywhere. And ultimately, I mean, I've only been in the program now for 2 months, and for our class 67, we're set to graduate in September of 2025. So I have that to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. You had said it before. You were 9 years, right, as an enlisted, moved up through the ranks to E6. Mm-hmm. What was you said that it was your drive. What was the reason for you? Why did you want to become an officer after spending 9 years and working your way through oh God, that was empty. Working your way through the enlisted ranks?
Yeah. So the reason that I wanted to become an officer, there's several reasons, but it comes down to the type of leadership that I wanted to contribute into the organization. So as an E6, I saw myself being able to make an impact. However, I knew as an officer I could bring that to a broader audience. And so that's what really pushed me to become an officer. And getting my head wrapped around the idea of going through OCS, it was just a small little step in what I knew could be a great career as an officer. And yeah.
So you kind of spent the first half of your career essentially on the enlisted side. And do you plan on finishing and completing a 20-year career with the National Guard?
Yeah, I plan on doing 30 plus.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that's what I say is like, you and me, like, when I saw you, I was like, oh, that's what I'm aiming for. And then now that she says that, it's like 30 years. I'm like, I'm the kind of person that's like, hey, this organization is so good. Like the Army for me has been so good that I will not retire. You need to kick me out. You will need to kick me out. Like one of my first sergeants, I think he did like over 40 years. I think he did.
Wow.
He did 40 years, and he's like, hey, this is too easy. Like you do the right thing. Be wearing whatever you need to be on the right uniform. Do always the right thing. Have integrity. Live by the Army values, and you'll be good.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you want to get out of an organization that, treats you well, gives you good stuff, good benefits? And he's like, he was sending majority of his drill pay to his TSP. He's like, I don't need that money. That's going to my TSP.
Right.
Because he's like, I cannot send 100% to TSP because, the deductions and stuff. He's like, I think it's like 85% of my paycheck is going to TSP right now. And I'm like, he's like, for sure, he's like, yeah, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And I don't need to get paid here. That's for my retirement. And on top of that, I don't want to get out because, coming to drill is, as other people have said before, is that brotherhood. Once you go to drill, it's like going back to, something different. That's your daily life,
Yes. And I'm not worried about you at all from everything I've heard in your stories here, and especially there's a term, and maybe I'll let you touch on it a little bit, when a soldier and a non-commissioned officer especially becomes an officer. If you would explain that term.
Yeah, it's called going over to the dark side.
or I was no, not at all. My term was a Mustang. So a non-commissioned officer that is now leading in an officer role.
Yeah.
But
I think going to the dark side was coming to recruiting.
Oh, that too.
No, congratulations. Do you think that the skills from leading in a non-commissioned officer role have helped you through OCS right now?
Tremendously. Because it comes down to basic soldiering ultimately through OCS. Having to ruck march, having to do land nav, which we're being grilled on. So that stereotype of lieutenants getting lost hopefully doesn't happen.
Yes.
But no, like I said, it's just the basic marksmanship or basic soldiering skills that's honed down on us. So yes, over the 9 years, I've accumulated a lot of mentors and leaders that I want to embody. And it helps me tweak my own leadership. So then I'd be a competent and respectable leader.
Absolutely. No, I look forward to saluting you when you graduate.
So, sorry, I was making sure cameras were good.
No.
So, one thing. So you mentioned like, being an NCO is helping you on the program right now. So how is the demographics looking? Like like your peers on your class is like majority of non-commissioned officers like NCOs, or majority are like lower enlisted? Or
I would say it's half and half, because there's also an option for civilians who have their bachelor's degree to come into the military on an 09 Sierra contract. So then their job is to essentially go through basic and then go through OCS to be commissioned. So we have a couple of 09 Sierras that have just gone to basic, and that's all they've had in their military career so far. And in comparison, where there's some E5s, E6s, I believe we have 3 E7s.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the highest rank.
There's a lot of experience there.
Yes.
It is. It's a very broad experience, from very little, just from
coming from
TRADOC to years, 13 plus years of experience. So it's interesting being put into an environment like that, where we're all being tested and we're all being disciplined.
Yes.
If one is not up to standard.
Now, the instructors do they hold the enlisted NCOs at a higher standard? Do they know those that came from the enlisted background?
So we were able to express or explain our experiences, but the standard is the same for everyone across the board.
That's good to hear.
There is no, you were an NCO, you should do better. It's everyone should do better.
And can you explain for the viewers, for those that are watching and listening, we have people that come in that do have, a bachelor's degree, and they're not sure. They see the enlisted side, and they see the pictures and brochures and videos, and they see the NCO ranks in the Corps, and that interests them, but then they also are eligible to go through the state OCS. Can you talk about the different leadership styles? I know you briefly touched on it, all of your experience as an NCO, and now you're going to lead in a different way. How so? What are the differences that you can tell people, or even junior soldiers that are interested in possibly coming over to the OCS, on how that's going to differ when you graduate OCS, and the different types of leadership that you're going to be doing in the National Guard?
So I'll have you rephrase your question real quick. I might have to go back on this one.
Yeah, no. Okay. Yeah, that was pretty long and drawn out. So
I think the way you're going is like, like you recently had applicants and coming here, and I was like, that's an OCS candidate, and but they might be interested into NCO. And then I think Sergeant Orker is trying to say is like, can you explain like to our viewers, is like,
which do you prefer?
What's the difference on being an NCO,
because
leading
NCOs
as an
NCO
leaders,
versus what you're going to be doing as an officer.
Gotcha. What the leadership differences are.
Yes. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Well, let's see here. I feel like that's a kind of a difficult question to answer, because I'm not commissioned yet. I haven't been granted the opportunity to be a PL or be in that role yet. As an NCO, I could talk all day, every day about it. But as a lieutenant, the world is my oyster. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I think that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's a fair answer.
No, it is.
Being honest,
It
it's
is.
like, hey, I'm in the process to being like.
I respect it.
I started. I'm currently on the process. I'm doing my chapter 2 physical.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you ask me the questions once, I think my answer will be similar. It's like I don't know. You
Yeah.
know, even though my wife is an officer and she commissioned 2 years ago, she was E4. So, and we see every day how officers do stuff. I think for Candidate Lopez here to actually pick like a vision. I think is hard at this time.
And I think for the soldiers watching and for those that are wanting to become soldiers, one of the way I think about it, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong if they're teaching it at OCS, state OCS, is on the NCO side, we are in charge of training our soldiers, right? Whereas on the officer side, you're going to have a bigger impact, like you talked about, in the planning and operations, and really being able to make policy change in the National Guard. Would you agree? More so than maybe a non-commissioned officer side?
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like that shouldn't deter any officers from gaining that experience or that knowledge from their NCOs.
Sure.
One thing, so going back to that question is like when my wife commissioned, and I was already an officer, non-commissioned officer, sorry. I was already a sergeant. So she asked me, like, can you give me advice? And I was like, just like listen to your NCOs, because they're the one that you're getting to that unit, the unit she's currently at. You don't know your soldiers. That NCO that is there know what what are their like strengths or weaknesses, or who will work better on certain positions. So he will help you manage until you get the grasp. So I think that's why we are called the backbone of the Army, is because we work directly with soldiers,
right?
So we lead straight with them, like, and even though some officers try to go down and roll their sleeves down, that's the way I see myself. Hopefully, in the future, if I become an officer, it's like I'm gonna
not afraid to
roll my sleeve up,
get dirty and get in with the rest of the soldiers.
Because and we've talked this before, is like there's a difference in between, and hey, respect to those that come from ROTC or direct commission. My wife did direct commission, but then coming from being an NCO, it gives you that, I think it gives you like more. It gives you more understanding of how things work and how your soldiers should be doing, or are what they're expected from them, and what they expect from you, because military ranks work both ways. If you take care of your soldiers, we'll take care of you.
Right.
So
no, I'm excited to see when you commission, and see where you go in the future.
Yeah, we gotta go there and have a lot of like balloons and stuff. I could not make it to this one. Last one, the OCS graduation. I was in Fort Riley, but I gladly went for the walks graduation with Chief Kapok. Shout out to Chief Kapok. We went to Indiana to the federal graduation, and we the next day we had the state one, and hopefully this year I can make it to the state one, but then the year after, so 25 September, you said?
Yes.
Yeah we're gonna throw a party at the RTI.
And I'm seeing quite a trend I'd like to ask you about, and so coming over into the Colorado National Guard and trying out for the biathlon team, and then trying out for the marathon team, and then trying out for the endurance team, and then trying out for state OCS. I'm seeing a big motivation here with not giving up and looking for extra and raising your hand, what is your drive? That this is a lot that you're involved in, and not only on the extracurricular side, but now your career and moving forward and changing direction. What gives you this drive that you've found thus far?
I would say that's a great question. Have me thinking, looking into my soul. What is the answer?
It's because you're nonstop. Like when you walk through that door, I'm like, what is there something you don't do?
It's just so good to see, and we preach it, and you see it, and I know you see it, and you see the soldiers and the leaders in the Colorado National Guard.
I have the podcast name.
We
usually
what is it?
We every time we say what's the podcast name? What's the podcast name? So right now I'm saying it. The podcast name will be. You wanted to put like candidate or staff sergeant?
It's up. We could do. Really, it's up to you. I don't know because I answered it both because it's hard. To differentiate for others.
So well, you're a candidate. So I'm gonna put candidate Lindsey Lopez, and then super soldier, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because nonstop, like every time you say me,
absolutely.
we did this, and I'm like, what?
And we see it, and I know you've seen it, and you are the living embodiment of raising your hand and finding these opportunities and really pushing yourself in what's available in the National Guard. And you see the soldiers that are always asking, I didn't hear about this. How do I get involved in this? And here you are. We've pulled up the websites. We've shown you how to get the tuition benefits. We've shown you how to apply for the biathlon team, the marathon team, and the endurance team. And we've shown you how to now apply if you want to continue serving in a different leadership style in OCS. Yeah. And so I know it's a loaded question. It's probably very hard to put you on the spot. But more so for those soldiers that are needing, a little bit of motivation, and then they see this. Seeing this is enough. But hearing you talk about it and giving them advice of, not stopping. And, I guess if we're going to stay stagnant, expect stagnant results. But
exactly.
This is the complete opposite, and this is what's available.
Yeah.
And so I love to see it.
Yeah. I always say the mindset, never let yourself be stagnant. Keep growing, whether it's professionally, academically, personally, because there are going to be, how do I put this? I guess the key word that I'm looking for is resiliency and consistency. Because if you, like I said, if you're not pushing yourself, then you're not pushing your team, your company, your organization as a whole. If you're not willing to work on yourself,
is crazy. I think I mentioned this since Sergeant Max Miller mentioned this. Is like he mentioned the performance based organization, and you mentioned. And he mentions too, like if you don't volunteer yourself, you will not get far in the military. And Sergeant Lopez, I think she's the soldier that basically emulates that. She's
I have to get my ego checked.
Yeah, it's like you're on everything. And again, it's like when you started, I think the first thing you sent to me, I think it was the biathlon thing last year. And then you sent me, we did this too. I'm part of the marathon. I'm like, and then recently, but by then you sent me the flyer for the DECA. And I'm like, what is there? Another one. It's like something else. And it's crazy because Sergeant Max Miller and other people that we had in the podcast is like, you need to raise your hand. You need to, you need to expose yourself to new things, to new experiences, to know people, to be upfront. And I think you are the best example we can put out there.
Absolutely.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, you get out what you put in wholly in everything. So to have, it's the pursuit of happiness for me is volunteerism, whether it's, like I said, we're gonna have to cut this. I don't
That's okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start off anymore. But yeah.
Volunteerism.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to close the podcast. You know, her pursuit of happiness is, you know, volunteer and everything. I think, do you run the Memorial Day?
I'm going to.
Last year you did.
I did.
You see,
And
she you know,
that is
Colorado
the,
Springs has the Memorial Day Norwegian Rock March.
and
Exactly.
in Castle
So
Rock
I'm
this year.
planning to do it this year, just to, you know, because I need to start rocking. Because if I go OCS, they're gonna break me. So yeah, I gotta start, like, you know, taking out my rock and putting weight on. So
And you're signed up for this year 2024 Norwegian Rock March, correct?
Absolutely. The goal is to get the Norwegian Foot March badge to be able to put on my ASUs.
Castle Rock, Colorado. Do you have details?
Yeah. It is
Pull it up.
May 18th, and
so it's gonna be this year's gonna be Castle Rock.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's not gonna be Colorado Springs.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's gonna be ran by the
same organization.
Special Forces Foundation. Okay, let me see if I found that.
Yeah, if we
flyer.
can pull it up for Colorado, Castle Rock 2024 Norwegian Rock March. I want to give a shout out to any soldier that has listened or watched the podcast that may be interested in the biathlon team, the marathon team, or the endurance team. If you have a passing ACFT and you meet height weight requirements and you are not flagged, and one of these programs sounds interesting and you think you have what it takes, there's going to be an individual here that's going to be at the Ruck March. I would highly suggest, stomp, stomp, wink, wink, that you sign up and complete the Norwegian Ruck March and maybe find this individual and ask for more information.
Absolutely. I actually created a training schedule. So if anybody's interested and comments on the Facebook page or wherever, I'm more than happy to send a training schedule. So then you can ramp up to be able to ruck the 18.6 miles with the 25-pound ruck.
Amazing. And so here it is. Here's the website, memorialdaymarch.com. You can register right there. I have not signed up for it before. Have you done it before?
Last year, no.
because they usually do. Let me see. Because they usually do 5K, right? 5K, 10K,
And 30K and 30K Ruck March standards.
Oh yeah, it's right here. And then 30K run. All these three are runs, and then that's the Rock March.
That's the one that qualifies you for the Norwegian Foot March badge. Yes.
So last year it was a good event, and it's crazy because I went there just for the guard.
Yeah.
But then funny thing is, like, everybody was asking me or like posing for the camera, like, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start taking pictures of everybody because you know I don't see anyone else taking pictures here. And I was like all over the route. You know, I'll go through any entry point to the route, stop by, and then it's like people were like, "Are you here now?" So funny thing is, like, if you go to our Facebook page, CO National Guard, you'll see the main album is at almost 300 pictures. So
from the last event.
It was great. You know, we have a couple of recruiters. We have Sergeant Parker, Sergeant Klaus, Sergeant Richie, Sergeant Booth, and you ran the.
I ran the 5K because this was.
But we have more people running with you.
Yes. Yeah, there is a group of us that always go out together and do 5Ks and whatnot. But no, this one, I only did the 5K because it was 2 weeks after I did my marathon and I was still hurting.
Ooh. So let me see if I find the pictures from last year on our Instagram. So we had two or three members that they won the badge. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, you have a certain amount of time to complete this.
Yes.
So you know the time? I don't remember the time.
No,
it's
because it goes by age and
gender.
And in, you know, it's just, I don't know if
there's
they
this.
have it here.
Yeah, there it is.
The standards.
And in the same training schedule that I was talking about earlier, I do have it split up what you need to do per mile.
Right here.
Okay.
Those are the
Age bracket, female class, male class, and then the time allowed And so in hours and minutes to complete the 30 mile rock march.
We are in the strong team. It's like 5 was the female male. 4:30.
4 hours and 30 minutes.
I gotta start rocking. I gotta start rocking.
I can send you my training schedule.
I'm running. So
and if a soldier was able to complete these standards, would you imagine that they would be ready to come try out and compete in some of the stuff that you were talking about today?
Oh, absolutely.
Endurance and marathon team and biathlon.
Yes.
Okay.
So if someone is interested also on your training schedule, on where we can contact you.
Yeah.
Military email.
Okay.
Yeah. So it will be
Through Global.
It will be
Lindsey.lopez.mil@army.mil.
There you go. So I'm gonna send you an email.
Absolutely, and that can be anything regarding biathlon, endurance team.
Yeah, I'm gonna
incentives,
pull it out.
Everything.
Okay.
This is last year, and so we have Sergeant Parker, Staff Sergeant Valdez.
Mm-hmm.
He works up there in headquarters, and Pomeranke. They three won the Norwegian. It was a crazy good event. It was so foggy in the morning.
It looks foggy in that picture
it's
there.
going to be like that
It
this
was
year.
super foggy. Look,
better than that than hot.
Sergeant Dupuy participated too.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Should be a great event this year too. I'm so glad.
Hey.
Oh, who's that?
Did you saw that one?
No, yet.
So yeah. So that's something we gotta start doing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going?
I've
Now
been
you-
invited.
now you
and
have to.
I will start training.
We gotta start training.
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta start training.
Yep. You will see me at the whether I'm running or rucking, I will be there.
Okay.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
Cool.
Same.
So, Candidate Lopez, thank you for coming here. Again, if you're liking the content, please go below, subscribe, hit the notification bell, so whenever we upload a video, you'll get a notification. And again, Facebook and Instagram, where you can see all the contents that we've been pulling up. CO National Guard, Facebook and Instagram. Again, thank you, Candidate Lopez. Looking forward to get you back once you commission, because we're gonna throw a party at the RTI in 2025. So looking forward. You're not going anywhere, so you're still on your office, right?
Correct.
So if you have questions about incentives, you have questions about any of the teams, endurance, biathlon, marathon, or if you want the training schedule for the Norwegian, which I'm going to message her or email her.
Yes.
Contact her, lindsey.lopez.mail. So again, thank you.
Of course.
Is
Thank you
there
for having me.
Last 2 questions for me.
Yes.
That's it. So twofold. Do you have a soldier or an individual in the National Guard that you would recommend to come on the podcast next and tell their story?
Ooh.
And then secondly, do you have any pieces of advice that you would like to leave our audience with? Words of wisdom, quotes, something that stuck with you and helped you throughout your career.
I'll start with the advice / quote. I'll start with the second question.
Okay.
A piece of advice is don't give up on yourself. You are the only person capable of stopping yourself from progressing. And that goes with any aspects in life. A quote I would say is, the grass is always greener where you water it. It's not always greener on the other side. It's where you put in that effort, where you put in the effort to make that greener.
Yeah.
And who I would recommend on this podcast?
Could be anyone,
I think the world would love to hear from Sergeant First Class Anthony Patterson.
And who is Sergeant First Class Anthony Patterson?
He is currently the senior HR NCOIC at 147.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have homework to do.
He was the one with you in the last picture, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he recently, I saw his, I'm like, hey, you promoted, congratulations. So I'm gonna, if he gets to this point,
Yeah.
and he sees this before we contact him, then that'll be good.
Then
but
you're
then
next.
but then he's next.
Yeah, so much information, and thank you so much for coming and telling your story.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited to see what the next chapter looks like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
It was a great podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good job.
So, ooh.
Good job.